Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on weird and true mysterious stories, from glitches to the paranormal. Would you like even more content? Here's my Patreon. Now onto the stories. Case file number 1058, written by Independent.63, crashing into the multiverse twice. Long story short, I was in a mild car crash yesterday. I got rear-ended at a stoplight in rainy, slippery conditions. I banged up my leg pretty hard, and the back of my car was smashed in. Did a police report, filed a claim, all good, all done. Today, I walk out to my car, and it's as good as new. 0 dents, not even a scratch, no evidence of the crash. I swear, I'm just a normal person, no hallucinations ever before, and I have no explanation. I stood there staring at it for like half an hour, touching the surface, trying to figure out how. Did I quantum jump? A glitch in the Matrix? Magic? Did I die in the crash and now live in some alternate reality, Final Destination style? How does a metal unbend itself overnight? And here's the real gut punch. It happened again a few days later. But this time it really stuck. The damage and all didn't go away. The first event kind of prepared me mentally for the second one. But none of this makes sense. Case notes for file 1058, crashing into the multiverse twice. So it is possible that the first event was a premonition, a kind of vision of what would come to pass. Though I'd have to side more with quantum immortality given how you describe the damage to your leg. Major arteries are within the leg, so near the thigh, even towards your calf area, there's major arteries, like highways for blood, that traverse there, and if it's severed, even internally, you'll just bleed out from inside. You may not even necessarily know anything is wrong, you'll just feel tired and eventually pass away. The fact it happened again, however, that's just wild. If you're in a new universe, remember, it's the same time coordinates relative to other universes, so it just means to say that everything is running concurrently, as we understand it. So if you traverse to a new universe in quantum immortality, you're still in the same date and time. Sometimes there's like tiny rewinds or fast forwards to square the circle. But this wouldn't relate to having an accident a few days later, 3 days later. So it seems like somehow in this other universe, it's quite different and you had an accident that somehow played out. I mean, the amount of things that have to go wrong for an accident to happen. So if that is the case, you're just in a universe that is that different, then you should notice all kinds of weird anomalies all the time. Like people's personalities are different. Maybe your friend is, maybe you have different friends. But, different paint colors on walls or just anomalies, the credit cards in your wallet are different, even bank passwords. That's something that you don't think about a lot, but if you're in a new universe and the other you that was there may not have chosen the same password, so you're kind of out of luck in those cases, right? If you can't change the password. That would be annoying. Maybe sometimes when you think you forgot a password, you actually didn't. You're just remembering a different universe's password. Just a random thought there. Case file number 1059, written by AsYouHearTheBirds, From Depression to Joy, My Ayers Rock Encounter. I used to live and work at Ayers Rock. I had been struggling with depression for quite a while, and one day, as I was crossing some sand dunes with groceries, I began to feel like I had enough. I wanted out, and I figured I'd do it when I got home. It was at this point that I noticed something pretty big coming towards me. I looked up to see what it was, but didn't see or hear anything unusual. Nevertheless, I sensed that whatever it was expanded even larger and larger as it grew nearer, and I felt my whole body begin to vibrate. It was like being in a really heavy storm or something, because this thing was immense and powerful. At first I thought I was in the way and was going to be annihilated, but somehow realized that this whatever it was going to pass me. I then had an extremely strong feeling that it had noticed me and briefly glanced in my direction. A feeling of overwhelming love and compassion, with a hint of teasing humor, like I was some silly little kid, washed over me, and a word boomed in my head: breathe. So I did. I breathed in as deep as I could and felt months and months of sadness and loneliness and self-loathing simply and immediately replaced with a pure feeling of joy. I was weightless. I was happy. Nothing else mattered. And as I stood there, The whatever it was strode past me on its way to something I somehow knew was really important, leaving me with tears streaming down my face and all my groceries spilled in the sand. Case notes for file 1059. From depression to joy. My Ayers rock encounter. What a moving and full experience this must have been for you. Just incredible. I know a lot of people feel down and depressed lately, especially in the recent years with everything that happened. I do wonder how people are picked for this kind of help. If it's willed external like a guardian angel, spiritual, or just from the simulation, it's not random. So I have to think it's related to the person, but why would some people deserve, or is it even related to deserving? It's just something that has to happen for that person for everything else to play out as it needs to. Maybe instead of that, maybe it's your own will screaming back into the past because you're in a negative future and you want to avoid that buffered reality, so you're choosing something different this time. And to do that, you have to scream back at your past. Almost like a spiritual ghostly echo screaming back, don't do it. But not in those words, just as a feeling instead. No, Dave? No. Don't do it, Dave. Creepy file number 87. Written by Mesakasa 1. The Curious Case of the Blue SUV, a mysterious road trip story. This weekend, I went through the weirdest road trip of my life. So, for a bit of context, I work with my mom, and we fairly often go on long road trips for work. This weekend, we were coming back from a business fair about 14 hours away from where we live. After about 1 hour on the road, I noticed a blue SUV towing 2 bikes in front of me. I remember it stood out for me because the bikes were really nice ones. Eventually, this car overtook a truck and it got away from us. After about 2 more hours, I noticed the car overtaking us, and it just happens to be the same blue SUV with the bikes from before. I even remember my mom asking if we had seen this car before and me answering, yeah, he probably stopped for gas or something and we passed him. The thing is, along the next 4 hours, this happened at least 2 more times, even though we had stopped ourselves. At this point, I was already thinking it was weird, but maybe that this guy must take a lot of P-stops and likes to make back time by speeding? We were about 8 hours in when we got to a point where the road was completely blocked by other cars that had stopped. We assumed that there was some sort of accident in the road ahead, and that had stopped traffic. I didn't have the internet to check, but I could still see a map of the area on my phone, so I started to check for alternate roads while my mom left the car to talk to the other drivers. I found that there was an exit from the main road about 200 meters from where we were, and that I could use it to go through an alternate road that would take me back to the main one about 5 kilometers ahead. Mom got the same information from a truck driver who said it was a very narrow dirt road, too thin for his truck, but we could probably go through it and skip the accident. She also found out it had been a pretty bad one, and that they probably would take a few hours to unblock the road. Knowing this, we decided to drive through the side of the road to the exit and try to find this alternate path. We also switched seats since I'm better with maps, so my mom was driving. It was already pretty dark at this point, but we had no problem finding this road. The thing is, it was a really bad dirt path, so we had to go pretty slow. We even reached a small wooden bridge that I had to leave the car to check if it was still stable, and it was totally deserted. A bit later, we reached a split in the road, and I looked back at the map to see which way to take. I found out we should go left, but after taking a second look at the map, I noticed something that made me even more creeped out than I already was. The river we had just crossed was called Rio de Mortes, which is Portuguese for River of the Deaths, and it encountered the main road at the point we estimated the accident to be. I decided not to say anything, and we continued to follow the path until we got back to the main road, where we switched seats again. At this point, the main road was deserted as well, probably because every single car going in this direction had stopped at the block in the road. After a short while, we start seeing a few ambulances go by in the opposite direction every now and then, which looked normal at first, but it eventually was looking like we had seen too many of them for a single accident. They also looked exactly the same, but that is what you expect from ambulances. The main road was also very dark at this point, and it went on without stopping for much longer than we remembered from our way to the business fair. Eventually, a car starts to approach behind me, and after a little while, it overtakes us. And to make things even weirder, it just happened to be the exact same blue SUV with the bikes. We eventually pass by a big city, and I suggest we should enter it to eat something a little nicer, even though it would make the trip longer, and Mom agrees. All the weird stuff stopped happening after that, but I tried to Google the accident when we stopped to eat, and again in the day later at home, and couldn't find anything about it, which is pretty weird as well. It was a major accident. Case notes for the creepy file number 87, The Curious Case of the Blue SUV, a weird road trip story. So you may have been stuck in an entirely transient multiverse crossing point, which has a lot of symmetry with the rickety old bridge you had to cross over too, but I don't think that's necessarily related, although it's very weird that the accident happened crossing into the point where the river would cross over, and it's called, Rio de Mortes. That's River of Deaths. I guess it fits the name. The river's trying to live up to its reputation. You know what I kind of miss? Those road trips in the past where you had to use an actual map, like unfolding the giant map and figuring out where you are in relation to everything. Very old school, I guess, but yeah. It's better to have pocket GPS on your phone, much more practical, of course, but I don't know, I still miss it, finding your way. More of an adventure, it feels like, I think. You can still do it, I guess. And now time for the quote of the day. Life is not the amount of breaths you take, it's the moments that take your breath away. Alex Hitchens. Yeah, this reminds me of the oatmeal analogy, that life is like a bowl of oatmeal. Most of it is somewhat bland, it's still nutritional and important, but really you want those raisins. Or bananas if you had bananas like I do to oatmeal. Or those pockets of brown sugar or maple syrup. Those are the fun times. But to appreciate the fun times, you have to have the mundane times as well. Not necessarily negative, but, just a baseline. If your baseline is awesome all the time, I guess that's okay, but you won't appreciate it as much as if you have a baseline of just oatmeal.